in the East. It does not matter. Let it go.
Here's what's happening at this hour. Clippers All-Star Paul George left last night's loss to the Thunder with an apparent right leg injury. George left the arena on a cart, and there was no word on his condition from the team. Nearly 9 years ago, he suffered a gruesome fracture on that same leg. Timberwolves big man Karl Anthony Towns is expected to make his return to the lineup tonight against the Hawks. That's according to multiple reports. Towns hasn't appeared in a game since November because of a calf injury. And meanwhile, in boxing, a proposed heavyweight title unification bout between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk next month is off, according to multiple reports. Talks have broken down for the big fight, which would have taken place on April 29th at Wembley Stadium in London. Usyk holds the WBA, WBO, and IBF titles, while Fury has the WBC belt. And Shohei Ohtani fanned Angels teammate Mike Trout for the final out, and Japan beat the United States 3-2 to win the World Baseball Classic. Pitching in relief, Showtime used a filthy slider that fooled Trout in a dream MVP matchup that served as a fitting finale for the WBC in Miami. Japan finished unbeaten and won its third title. It's the only nation to win multiple WBC titles.
Welcome into CBS Sports HQ, presented by Neutral. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Jacqueline D'Agostino. The Sweet 16 is now set, and things are looking a little bit different this time around. It's just the fourth Sweet 16 that doesn't have Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, or Kansas. That's since the Sweet 16 began back in 1975.
Yeah, we got a lot of different variety in the field of 16 this go around. There's 11 different conferences that are represented in the Sweet 16, with the SEC and the Big East leading the pack there. Each of those conferences have 3 teams that are still fighting for a national championship. Our guy Chip Patterson, he is hard at work, and he reseeded the Sweet 16 with all the teams that are left. Bama and Houston, 1 and 2, UCLA, UConn, and Texas rounding out the top 5 there. Xavier at 12, Miami at 13, and then San Diego State at 14. But some changes happening. Still, it remains Bama and Houston still towards the top of the list. And we have Chip Patterson here with us on HQ to explain the reseeding, kind of the method behind the madness there. And Chip, a lot of the brackets have Bama and Houston heading to the Sweet 16. They're the 1 seeds. Bama now the betting favorite to win it all. Cougars not far behind. And Chip, these teams, they're staying a 1 seed for you.
Yeah, without a doubt. They have checked a lot of boxes. And I think that for Alabama, what you like is the real response, especially in the second round against a Maryland team that really tried to make the game ugly. And they really tried to pull Alabama down. And Alabama was not going to have that at all, really pulling away. You're happy to see that Brandon Miller was able to have a full workload, that he was able to get double-digit scoring. So you're no longer concerned about that soft tissue injury that had him scoreless in their first-round game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And then on that health note, I think that that's the big encouraging thing for Houston, that if you were going to knock the Cougars in terms of where they stack up against the rest of the teams, it was because you thought that Marcus Sasser was going to be limited, or that Jamal Shedd, who suffered a knee injury against Northern Kentucky, might not be able to be the best version of himself. I thought that the second half against Auburn really showed you that Houston has another gear, a championship gear that a lot of teams don't have. It was an ugly shooting performance early, but they locked in. They got a ton of stops, and they made everything difficult for the Tigers. It is exactly what Kelvin Sampson wants. So not only are Alabama and Houston the only 2 1 seeds left, but to me, through 2 rounds, they have checked a lot of boxes for living up to that reputation.
All right, let's talk about UConn. Dan Hurley getting the Huskies back in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2014, when they eventually went on to win the national championship in 2014 as well. What are you doing with UConn?
I've got UConn jumping ahead of other teams that have better seeds in my re-ranking of the Sweet 16 teams. And I'm so torn on it, Jacqueline, because as we talk about this, you're going to hear me talk about the quality of opponents and whether you got quality wins. And, you know, when you go through and you take down an Iona team that, yes, is coached by Rick Pitino, and a St. Mary's team that, yes, ranked as one of the top 10 to 15 teams in the computers all season, that those are good wins. But it's not like they beat 2 power conference opponents. But yet the way that UConn went about its business was just so impressive to me. Adama Sanogo had a terrific weekend, and we really got to see that with the length and athleticism that this Huskies team has, they are looking a lot more like the team that started, 14-0. Like, they are looking like that team in the middle of the season where we wondered if anybody in the country was going to be better than UConn. They lock in on the defensive side, so much athleticism offensively. It's really, really tough to handle UConn when they're playing this well. So again, I'm torn because I jumped UConn way up in the seeding, and I was doing that within the lens of how impressive they were. But I also do recognize that this upcoming Sweet 16 matchup against Arkansas will be the first power conference opponent the Huskies have faced. A big test ahead for Dan Hurley's group.
And Chip, you mentioned quality wins. I mean, Creighton definitely has some. They knocked off teams like NC State, Baylor even, to get to the Sweet 16. But you have them as a 7 seed despite those quality wins. So why is that?
Yeah, and that's 7 overall. So like when you're looking at that, a 7 overall is more like a low 2 seed. So I'm advancing Creighton from being around a 6 to closer to being like a low 2. And it is because of those quality wins that you point out right there. And I think that NC State was underseeded at 11 just because of how difficult they can be, the awesome backcourt of Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner. And I thought that Creighton had a terrific game plan for that and a terrific game plan going up against Baylor. The combination of the offensive firepower of the two teams that Creighton has faced are really, really high. And Creighton, a team that really impresses me with its versatility of scoring options anyway, was able to limit Baylor and NC State in terms of what they were able to do offensively. So I think that Creighton is playing a lot more like a low 2, high 3 seed, as I do have them number 7 overall in my reseeding efforts.
All right, keeping it in the Big East, we want to talk about Xavier back in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2017. And Chip, you got them as a 12 seed overall.
Yeah, this is one that dropped. This is one where other teams were moving ahead as I got very enthusiastic about a UConn side and jumping them all the way up to the front of the line. As I got excited about Creighton, here's Xavier looking around at their Big East counterparts like, what in the world, Chip? What do we need to do? And it's just a little bit of a matter of the way the bracket broke. So Kennesaw State, a 14 seed, gave this Xavier team all they could handle. Jack Nungy with a huge stop, good second half defensive effort to make sure the Musketeers don't get bounced early in Greensboro. Sure. But who did they play then in the next game? They played a Pitt team that was an 11 seed that started in Dayton, that was playing its third game in less than a week. I just think that that's where, the quality of competition, I am not necessarily knocking Xavier down, as I do have them, currently sitting at number 12 among the 16 seeds left. But I just didn't have a lot to really make me want to move Xavier up. And Xavier fans are going to be furious because they're going to look at the head-to-head results, which includes a lopsided result against the Creighton team that I've got 5 spots ahead of the Musketeers. And they're going to say, does head-to-head matter? And I'm going to say, no, it's a power ranking. It's all about March Madness. But for Xavier, the reason why I haven't, jumped the Musketeers ahead as other teams have lost is, again, because a 14 seed that you struggled with and an 11 seed playing its third game in less than a week. Texas is up next. The opportunity is there for Xavier to show that it belongs here in the deep rounds of the NCAA tournament. It just hasn't faced the same tests as some of these other squads.
All right, in Miami, they have a really tough task ahead. They get ready for Houston. So, Chip, where are you putting Miami?
I've got them down at number 13. This is one of the lowest ones. And look, as a number 5, you have already exceeded your seed line expectation by even making it to the Sweet 16. But this thing got really, really dicey against Drake. And I think that while Miami was able to win, and you credit the Hurricanes for being able to steal that game in the game's final minutes, I think that this is something that is a little bit concerning. Then you go up against Indiana. I thought the Hoosiers take a lot of blame for that result. I mean, they just fell asleep defensively. They allowed Miami to get pretty much anything that it wanted. And so I am so impressed with 73-year-old Jim Larinaga. The fact that the Hurricanes are back in the Sweet 16 once again speaks to the real quality and foundation of this program. But when I'm trying to look for reasons to move Miami up ahead of some of these other teams that have been really impressive, I think that first round result against Drake is the weight that's pulling it down.
And a team that Miami is ahead of on your reseeding is San Diego State. They beat 2 mid-major teams to get to this point, beating Furman by more than 20. That's their biggest win in their NCAA tournament history, but you have them as a 14 seed, Chip.
Yeah, you go up against a 12, you go up against a 13, that combined seeding is about 25. And so you've got a similar situation to what we were looking at with Xavier, where I can recognize the quality of a win and how good it is to be able to see this San Diego State team be able to get the buckets that you needed, especially to put that game totally out of reach. I mean, Furman was not even a contest. San Diego State got up early and they just squeezed the life out of them. They are a very confident bunch, and that is something to watch going up against Alabama. But you beat Charleston, you beat Furman, and much love to the CAA and the SoCon. That is not exactly, for example, the Creighton story where you beat an NC State and a Baylor. So San Diego State, great job getting to the Sweet 16. Great job to be able to snap that Mountain West losing streak. But for the Aztecs, when I'm looking for reasons to jump you ahead of other teams, the quality of competition kept it down. But again, I will say, They held Furman, a good offensive team, to one of its lowest scoring totals of the season. They held Charleston, a very good offensive team, to one of its lowest scoring totals of the season. And they held Utah State in the Mountain West Tournament to one of its lowest scoring totals of the season. So Alabama better watch out, because the Aztecs are not going to make it easy.
All right, that is Chip Patterson joining us here on CBS Sports HQ, reseeding all of the Sweet 16 teams in the NCAA Tournament. Thank you so much, Chip. Good stuff as always. We appreciate it. And for more college basketball insight, make sure you check out the Eye on College Basketball podcast with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish. In the latest episode, the guys are previewing this week's Sweet 16 matchups, plus Final Four and 1 picks, and the guys are also repicking the bracket from the Sweet 16 all the way through to the title game. You can download and listen wherever you find your podcast, or you can make it easy and scan that QR code. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, and we're bringing you Game Plan, brought to you by Empower. Get your financial game on point and empower what's next. The Sweet 16 is filled with a ton of exciting matchups, and one of the most highly anticipated ones is Gonzaga against UCLA. It's the Zags' 8th trip to the Sweet 16, and the last 3 times that UCLA made it this far, they continued on to the Elite 8. Now, the last time these two teams met in the tournament was a Final Four thriller back in 2021 when Jalen Suggs hit a 3 at the buzzer to send the Zags to the